Welcome all for our webinar series. So my name is Togo Uchida, and I am the Executive Director of ICLEI Japan. It is my great pleasure to welcome all you speakers, panelists, and attendees on behalf of ICLEI Cities Biodiversity Centre to the second webinar in our series From Agreement to Action. Before we start the webinar, I just need to cover a few housekeeping rules. So all participants will remain muted during the webinar, and please put your questions in the chat box so speakers can respond to you later on. Please also note that webinar is being recorded and that by participating in the webinar, you give consent to be recorded. We will have time for questions, so please post your questions in the chat box, which you will find on the bottom of the screen. And if possible, please type the name of the speaker that you would like to direct your question so that speakers can respond directly, or we can direct the questions to them accordingly. So today's webinar on Target 12, Connecting the Dots Between Nature, Urbanization, and Health, aims to discuss opportunities at the subnational and local level to integrate nature planning for health and well-being within the urban context. Next slide, please. So, can you change the slide, please? Yes, okay. So the theme of International Day for Biological Diversity 2023, which was celebrated on 22nd May this year, was From Agreement to Action, Building Back Biodiversity. With its focus on implementation, action, and whole of government and whole of society collaboration, ICLEI Cities Biodiversity Centre are hosting and leading a series of 5 webinars with the support from partners under the theme From Agreement to Action, the key role of subnational and local governments in the Global Biodiversity Framework implementation. The partners include United Nations Environment Programme, Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity, International Union for Conservation of Nature, Committee of the Regions, and Regions 4. The purpose of this webinar series is to maintain the momentum from COP15 and mobilize our cities and regions towards COP16. These webinars will provide an opportunity to inspire each other, share information on actions being taken by local and subnational governments to contribute to the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework and the plan of action to engage local and subnational governments in implementing the GBF. So with these webinars, we aim to build commitments towards COP16 in Turkey coming up in 2024, and ultimately to reach the 2030 targets and 2050 goals. Next slide, please. Is it coming up? Yes, okay. So as you can see in the screen, we have a great lineup of speakers, and we deeply thank everyone for taking time to join us today. The session includes an inspirational message from Ms. Maimuna Mohammed Sharif, Executive Director of UN Habitat. Her message will be followed by the presentation of 4 case studies by regions and cities in the programs and policies related to Target 12, and our city and region representatives will join us for a panel discussion between after the presentations. So without further ado, I would like to first welcome Ms. Maimuna Mohammed Sharif, Executive Director of UN Habitat, to present her message. Executive Director unfortunately could not attend in person due to her work obligations, so she has kindly sent us the recorded video. So please show us the video.
Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome all of you to this webinar on the Global Biodiversity Framework. It focuses on Target 12, connecting the dots between nature, urbanization, and health. As I mentioned last December at the 7th Summit for subnational governments and cities, cities have pioneered many natural innovations. For example, pollinating roofs, highway underpasses for wildlife, and the reforesting of harbors. Even adding parks and street trees contribute to greater biodiversity in cities. However, much more remains to be done. The destruction of green space in cities is accelerating. In this light, Target 12, adopted in December in Montreal, is significant. It looks not only at the quantity of green and blue spaces in and around cities, but also their quality and connectivity. In other words, how well are natural areas functioning for both humans and non-human species? Well-functioning ecosystems provide benefits such as flood control and recreational space. These are well documented. There are also additional benefits such as air purification and nutrient recycling. The governments of the world have pledged to protect 30% of natural areas by 2030. Achieving this will require us to build better cities. However, the prevailing development model is based on sprawl, segregation, and privatization. It is out of balance with our natural habitat, and we need to do something about it. The second United Nations Habitat Assembly, which took place last month in Nairobi, adopted the first resolution on biodiverse and resilient cities, championed by Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Germany, Pakistan, Peru, Singapore, and Uruguay. The resolution welcomes Target 12 of the Global Biodiversity Framework. These resolutions request UN habitats to encourage a shift in urbanization that takes into account biodiversity and ecosystem services, and calls on UN habitats in collaboration with partners to establish an international expert advisory group on biodiverse and resilient cities. This group will guide the development of a toolkit and demonstration projects that tackle many of the challenges that I have described. As we take this work forward, I want to leave you with 3 messages. First, doing things right offers benefits to all. Second, curbing urban sprawl not only preserves natural habitat, but also reduces the transmission of deadly diseases. And third, doing things at scale, like providing basic services during the COVID-19 pandemic, must be the new normal. Finally, cities cannot do it alone. International agendas, national policies, and local plans need to support sustainable urban development. We all need more multilateral action as well as multi-level cooperation to create a better urban future for all. I wish you all the best today.
Thank you very much. Apologize for a bit of a how do I say, error on the screen in the beginning, but I was glad to hear all the messages clear from Executive Director. So thank you very much for that message. We shall come back to the detail of the result of the Habitat Assembly 2 later on in the panel discussion. So now I would like to proceed to hear how cities are integrating nature planning for health and well-being within the urban context, and so to contribute to Target 12 of the Global Biodiversity Framework. So first, I would like to start from a presentation by Councillor Nakaya from Cagayan de Oro of Philippines. So Councillor, thank you very much for joining today. Can you please introduce us what you're doing in your city in connection to today's theme? So, floor is yours. Oh, you are muted, Councillor.
Okay, thank you for the kind introduction. Okay, a happy Nature Day to all of us. Again, thank you, ICLEI Cities Biodiversity Centre, for choosing Cagayan de Oro to take part in this webinar series on the key role of subnational and local governments in the implementation of Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Please accept the warm regards coming from our City Mayor, Rolando Clarex Uy, and the people of Cagayan de Oro City. For our city is situated at the northern entrance to the island of Mindanao, Philippines. Few Mondays ago, the city mayor had issued an executive order creating the Ecological Services Protection Committee and TWG. Next slide, please. Pursuant to the promotion of environmental rehabilitation and conservation network ordinance. Thank you. This institutionalizes the membership and participation of the stakeholders, CSOs, religious IPs, margin sectors for the restoration of flora and fauna. The ordinance has also earmarked 10 million pesos in each year to nurture the nature and ensure sustainable watersheds. It is a pest-like approach to rehabilitate, conserve, and harmonize the ecosystem. Next slide. The pictures depicts the greening, pinning ceremony of ecosystem and biodiversity partnerships. You can see from the religious, private, companies, and from all walks of life of Cagayan de Oro. They are pinning their commitment to certain areas in the upland part of our city, and they're committed to rehabilitate our environment as well as conserve and preserve the intentions to protect our nature. Next slide. The pictures show the gathering of the civil society organizations, youth volunteers, or the city eco warriors. They have declared among themselves, and in fact, they are doing it right now, the tree planting activities and preservation of our environment. They are our major partners in trying to protect our nature. Next slide. This is a city-led activity, in fact, activities. Forest rehabilitation and restoration program on the river bank rehabilitation. You have the pictures, and mangrove development. Next slide. We have other environmental and conservation initiatives to name: natural resources inventory, cave management, biodiversity assessment, environmental conservation, mainstream community development plan, and the creation of community-based eco-warriors. Next. Soon we will have our own localization of the green building code, and we have standardized the program and the intentions of the ordinance based on the requirement of our environment, particularly on energy efficiency, water efficiency, material sustainability, solid waste management, site sustainability, indoor environmental quality. Next. Finally, on Monday, as a member of the City Council, we reported and sought for support from our colleagues at the Sangguniang in their respective capacities as chairpersons and members of various committees of the council to join us and the executive to initiate, form, and create proactive positions in the role of preserving our environment. As we rise, the platform of government of our mayor, and advance, the city would like to endeavor more regulatory and developmental measures that would strike a balance between economic prosperity for our people and preserving our ecosystems for the enjoyment of the next generations. We are now on our review of the city land use plan and will definitely make sure moving forward that conservation of nature will be the city's priority. Be assured that we will multiply. Thank you. Daghang salamat.
Thank you very much, Councillor. That was very, very interesting. Let us come back again. I have a few questions already in my mind that I want to ask you later on in the panel discussion. So thank you very much for that presentation.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to move on to Councillor Amanda Stone from Yarra City of Australia. Amanda, can you hear us? And yes, you could share the screen. So please, Amanda, can you please present your presentation? The floor is yours. Okay.
Sorry, a few things to negotiate. Thank you, Togo. Thank you for having me to join this wonderful panel. And what an excellent presentation to follow on from. I want eco warriors in my city too. It sounds very exciting. But this is my city. This is the city of Yarra. And as you can see, it's taken at an angle. It's a city of contrast physically, isn't it? We've got the Yarra River down the bottom there, which forms its border and gives it its name. But further on into the hinterland, you can see the former industrial areas, the workers' cottages, the hard surfaces, the narrow streets, the lack of vegetation. This is an area that is all being gentrified with high-density housing, next to no green space, and a community that is demanding green open space. And we have to create it somewhere. So where do you create new green open space in such a highly urbanised area? And how do you retrofit nature and biodiversity into an environment like this? Well, like many cities, we've had to take what we have and make the most of it. For many years, we've been converting road space and car parks to pocket parks, replacing hot, hard, heat-trapping asphalt with cooler, greener spaces. This hasn't been a random exercise. It's based on the well-established research on the health benefits of green spaces and on what people need. It's a bit of a lag in moving on. I'm sorry. The slide is not moving. I'm sorry. Oh, gosh. 1 second. I might have to do this a different way. Okay, I'll do this the awkward way. I apologise. The primary provision of new open space in Yarra is our open space strategy. This is a comprehensive research-based document which works hand in hand with our urban forest strategy, our integrated water management plan and our nature strategy. They work together. We've used research from the World Health Organisation and other organisations which showed that there's a key indicator being the proportion of a city population living within 300 metres of a green open space. It also showed the link between the closeness to an urban green space and the frequency of visits and the duration of the stay. It also showed the important link between biodiversity, mental health and wellbeing and access to nature. With mental health being the most commonly reported long-term health condition in Australia and much higher in the city of Yarra, this is a very important factor for us to consider. So based on that research and with the need for small local green spaces to be very close to where people live, we've set ourselves the task of ensuring that every citizen in our city has easy walking access to green open space, regardless of how old they are or what ability they are. This map here, this open space analysis, shows how we plan new spaces. Existing spaces are mapped with their size and function outlined. You can see the circles there. and gaps are identified and are filled in a planned way. We've created on average 1 new park a year for the last 10 years, and our aim is to have everyone being able to walk within 150 to 300 metres away from open space. Here's an example of one of those pocket parks, the road on the left converted to a park on the right. Heavily used, these parks. Converting road space to pocket parks like this is very expensive though, and it's time consuming, despite the enormous benefits to people's health and well-being. So how do we fund them? Well, in Victoria, we are able to charge an open space levy to developers who intensify the use of a land but don't provide open space. That's been 4.5% of the development value to date. We are currently making the case for that to be 10%. And to do that, we've used the research that I talked about just a minute ago. We hope that will be successful. The challenge for our city, though, and for other cities, is actually to connect this green infrastructure to the benefits for biodiversity and nature. It is, after all, a Global Biodiversity Framework. It's not an open space framework, so it's a little bit different. What we plant and how and where and how it's connected to other space is very important. And as our network of these parks increases, they're going to become very important corridors for biodiversity, connecting that Yarra River, for example, to other regional areas of open space for plants, animals and insects and birds. I'm sorry, not for plants. These corridors will increase in importance as climate change takes hold, as it is now, and as our leader of UN Habitat said a little while ago, development will continue to remove habitat, but also all species need to move around in established territories. Those corridors are very important. So green and blue spaces need to fulfil many functions, and the balance, unfortunately, is still weighed towards convenience and maintenance, and sometimes aesthetic rather than biodiversity. So the challenge of cross-department collaboration in councils is not unique to our city. A few days ago, I attended a community event which demonstrated the value of green open space in our city in so many ways. It was an outdoor concert, part of a festival, a celebration of Aboriginal music and culture. It was held in the green open space of a public housing estate, which was a location of very great significance to Aboriginal people. It's a meeting place. It contains a lot of established eucalypt trees, which contain leaves which are used commonly in smoking ceremonies. And it was a green space, which is something that our Aboriginal community values highly. This space on that one day was meeting the physical, social, cultural and spiritual needs of a very important part of our community. Now, I'm showing this image because not so long ago there was a plan to build all over this green open space. That plan was abandoned following advocacy from our council and a community campaign. So our challenge in meeting Target 12 is not just going to be creating new green and blue spaces, but it's going to be retaining and protecting those that we already have. Because with intense pressures on land, which are only going to increase, we're going to have to be strong advocates for nature and for the needs of our community in terms of health and well-being, for green and blue spaces into the future. Thank you.
Councillor Stone, thank you very much. You have raised a number of very important keywords. We should certainly come back later on these discussion session. Thank you very much for that presentation. I would like to move on to the next presentation. It will be by Mr. Toshihiko Sakamoto. He's a senior supervisor of eco-friendly city promotion from Nagoya City, Japan. So Sakamoto-san, please, the floor is yours.
尊敬的各位嘉宾，大家好，沈星，我非常荣幸代表昆明市参加此次循议的巡礼，市国家和地方政府 在实施全球生物多样性框架中的关键作用序列研讨会。感谢主办方尼可城地方可持续发展学会的邀请。作为生物多样性公约第15次缔约方大会第1阶段会议的举办地，及第7届全球城市和地方政府生物多样性峰会的合作伙伴，昆明市有幸和今天参会的许多同仁一起见证科普15和第7届城市峰会取得的一系列重要成果和共识。全球生物多样性丧失不仅对自然生态系统平衡造成严重损害，对城市生态系统、环境服务功能、基础设施建设、景观格局构建、经济社会可持续发展带来严重影响，同时也与维护城市生态系统平衡和生态安全、改善城市人居环境以及居民的健康和福祉息息相关。作为地方生物多样性的前沿守护者，各级地方政府的责任、作用和影响力比以往任何时候都显得更加重要。昆明市作为中国生态资源最富集和生物多样性最丰富的省会城市之一，致力于加强和创新生物多样性保护举措，提出建设高原明珠、绿美春稠的城市建设目标，进一步增强生物多样性、生态连通性和完整性，全力保护好蓝天白云、绿水青山和良田沃土，不断改善人民群众的健康和福祉。昆明市制定了昆明市城乡绿化美化3年行动方案，加快推进绿化建设工作。建设以改善人居环境、突出地域文化内涵、提升绿地景观品质为核心，以自然生态背景为基质的绿色网络，推动全市经济社会和生态文明的协调发展。昆明作为响应世界的春城，自然风光、历史人文极富特色和魅力，处处好山、好水、好空气、好生态，又有建设公园城市得天独厚的条件和优势，结合城市形象和文化特征，昆明市加快建设城市绿道网络体系。到2024年，计划全市建成区绿地率大于40%，公园服务半径覆盖率不低于85%，新建可待公园300个，新建或改造提升综合公园30个以上，主城区新增绿道600公里以上，城市300米建绿、500米建园，绘就开门见绿、出门入园独具昆明特色的绿美蓝图，让市民享受到了实实在在的绿色福利。在绿美横幅方面，也纳入全市河幅展翅实施范围的湖泊、流经城镇重点河流、城市周边大中小型水库、水利风景区、主要交通干道沿线的河幅岸线等为重点，应立志于开展水体自然岸线和环湖原生态植被保护及恢复。到2024年，呈现生态安全、水清河畅、岸绿景美、人水和谐的秀美画卷。当前，我们生活在一个高速城市化的时代，全球生物多样性丧失的趋势还没有得到根本遏制和扭转。昆明愿意与全球城市和地区密切合作，持续推进地方政府的行动落实，强化地方政府的承诺和贡献。我们与立可城合作，在公约秘书处支持的自然城市行动平台框架下，积极推动设立了立可城昆明自然城市卓越中心，计划发起城市生物多样性论坛等一系列活动，也支持和促进城市在生物多样性保护方面的知识分享和能力建设。届时，欢迎大家到昆明做客，切实感受春城魅力。最后，让我们在昆盟框架和地方政府行动计划的指引下，积极参与，携手合作，为实现人与自然和谐共生的共同使命和2050愿景同舟共济，砥砺前行。谢谢大家。
Okay, thank you very much. That wasn't from Nagoya, as you have heard. That was from Mr. Tsington Zhang. Sorry if I'm correct in pronouncing the name incorrectly. Of course, he is the deputy mayor of Kunming City, the famous Kunming, who have headed its activities in China and was going to host the COP15, but unfortunately because of COVID, that they were still keeping the presidency as China, but because they have all this abundant beautiful nature in Kunming, we have been receiving a message from Kunming City that they would like to host number of international conferences to invite international guests to experience what they have been doing in terms of preserving biodiversity in their own land. So that was a message from Kunming. Sorry, there was a mix-up of the roles in terms of presentation. So now I think I would like to move on to the presentation from Nagoya. So once again, I apologize, Mr. Sakamoto, but I would like to pass on the microphone to you for your presentation, please.
Ah, 戻さないか。これ画面が最初のやつじゃないでしょうか。
あ、ごめんなさい、そうですね。
OK。これでいいね。I'm Toshiko Sakamoto, Senior Supervisor for Eco-Friendly City Promotion, Environmental Affairs Bureau, City of Nagoya. Today, I will explain the biodiversity initiative of our city. Nagoya City is located almost in the geographical center of Japan. It is the third largest city in the country following Tokyo and Osaka. The region has long prospered as a center of the manufacturing industry. The port of Nagoya is ranked top in Japan by trade value. The 10th conference of the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity was held in Nagoya in 2010. This slide shows the status of greenery in Nagoya. The green coverage rate was 21.5% in 2020 and has been decreasing gradually. Small patches of green space and farmland can be found on the outskirts, but there is little green space in the urban centers. Conservation groups are working to conserve these green spaces on the outskirts. However, development of the urban area is expected to continue into the future. Therefore, we need to promote greening and enhance the quality of greenery. Let me introduce several systems of our city to promote green. The first example is a greening district system. This system requires greening of the specified area or more when constructing a building with a site area larger than a certain scale. Nagoya was the first municipality in Japan to launch this system. The city also operates the Nice Green Nagoya certification system. The greening efforts at private facilities are evaluated and ranked depending on the level of commitment. In addition to these greening Sorry. In addition to these greening promotion system, the city is also striving to enhance the quality of greening. Two projects to restore wildlife in the downtown area aims to promote biodiversity, conscious greening in the downtown area, and build an ecosystem network. The project was launched in 2021 in cooperation with private business. This March, guidelines were drawn up containing information about biodiversity conscious greening techniques and native species in the city. We believe that green spaces are crucial in urban areas. The city drew up the Greenery Master Plan, which focuses on various effects on greenery. The city has been promoting greenery-based city planning to demonstrate various effects, including the environment, health and welfare, urban vitality, and interaction. We believe these efforts will help us attain Target 12 of the Global Biodiversity Framework. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sakamoto. That was very, very comprehensive and interesting to see that some of the activities are quite similar from my point of view of what Amanda Stone also shared us. So let us come back to that in detail later on in this panel discussion. So that was all from presentation from the cities. So now I would like to move on to the discussion sessions. Maybe I would like to start from Councillor Amanda Stone, if I may. So as you have presented, and to my understanding, Yarra City is known very much internationally of its commitment to sustainability and environmental stewardship. But it's, as you also mentioned, it is also known for very internationally diverse society with quite a high population. Of course, Yarra is located right next to Melbourne, and it's a small city, but my understanding is that the density is quite high in Australia. So how has Yarra City successfully integrated nature-based solutions into urban planning to enhance biodiversity and small community health and well-being? I mean, you've answered these questions through your presentation, but if you could elaborate a bit about how difficult it was and how you have managed to move these in that direction that you have explained in your presentation, please.
It still is difficult. It's an ongoing story. When you talk about urban planning, it depends on whether you're talking about the statutory process of applying to build or to renovate, or whether you're talking about more strategic planning, the layout of the city. And they're treated quite differently. And in fact, it's been easier in terms of the layout of the city, that strategic planning, to effect change. And what I spoke about today in our planning for green open space and to a lesser degree blue space is really about strategic planning, and we can do that. That's land that we control, and no one's going to tell us what to do. And even though it's hard with hard surfaces and they're difficult decisions to take away road space from people, ultimately they're huge benefit and they're very, very popular. When we're talking about that statutory planning of development, that's much more difficult because it's largely controlled by the state government. and local governments' planning systems have to fit in with that. And the state government moves extremely slowly. So as a council, we have actually taken the lead on environmentally sustainable design, water-sensitive urban design, and joined with lots of other councils to say, here's a group of councils, we want to make these changes to our planning scheme. We've made the case, it's thorough, please do it. Now, it takes 4 or 5 years, but we get there. And we've had some really good changes in terms of statutory planning, and the National Building Code is starting to catch up with that too. The current effort we're undertaking is to get a requirement for zero carbon buildings. Now, that will be really important for health because Australia, and Victoria in particular, relies on gas as a fuel. And so there's a lot of gas burning in people's homes. It's really bad for health, for heating, for cooking and for hot water. And so getting off gas is a very strong focus at the moment, and we're trying to mandate that in our planning scheme. More than half of Victorian councils have joined in that time. So we're having to be really smart about making decisions that affect a lot of people over a lot of properties so that we can really effect change. That's not specifically about biodiversity, that last planning scheme effort, but it just shows you how persistent you have to be and how you have to collaborate with other councils. That really creates the force that's needed to break through sometimes.
You mentioned about the fact that you were able to create 1 new park per year so far. Roughly, and you've shared us example of shifting the streets or car parks into a pocket park, or putting some sort of is it a condition for the new building code, almost for putting a condition for the new developers to allocate a part of their land, which is you mentioned 4.5%, and you are now trying to make it to 10%, was it correct? To allocate for the green space. Is that how you try to kind of secure these lands?
I didn't explain that very well. The requirement is to provide open space, but 99.9% do not provide it because the land is too valuable for them. So instead, they have to provide that amount in money, in cash, to the council, and then we provide open space. Very hard to do because there's nowhere to put it. So that's why we're having to. I liked what's happening in Nagoya, because it sounds as though the developers there have to actually provide or do something with open space. With us, they give us money and they say, you do it. And we're doing it. It's just a different model. 4.5% is not enough for our population growth. We're asking for 10 now, which is pushing it a bit.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that explanation. I would like to move on to asking question to Councillor Nakaya from Cagayan de Oro. So you've, to my understanding, your city is a very fast-growing city in Mindanao, in Philippines. And when the city is growing rapidly, you tend to get a huge pressure. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not that the pressure is not there in Yara or the pressure is not there in Nagoya, but the speed in which your city is growing is much faster. And the pressure for your city to respond to the needs of the development must be quite high. And in this kind of situation, how is the city addressing the challenges of balancing what you have mentioned in your presentation? How do you balance the development with conservation of biodiversity and promotion of public health? Can you elaborate a little bit about your activity that you are dealing with this challenge?
Thank you for the question. Indeed, it's really a challenge for the local government unit of Cagayan de Oro to balance all these aspirations to become a metropolitan city, and at the same time the view of creating our nature with a strong backing coming from our people that development must not be our nature should not be sacrificed because of development. As you can see in Cagayan de Oro, there are flourishing subdivision development, and the development of subdivisions are no longer situated in the urban area, but it's already in the upland communities of Cagayan de Oro, considering that the city center is already congested. So there is really indeed an issue about this development concern. That is why we are proposing to fast track this metropolitan city. In fact, there were already discussions at the city council that some municipalities and cities that would be covered within the territory of a metropolitan, because it's not only Cagayan de Oro will become a metropolitan, but some adjacent cities and municipalities of the province of Bukidnon and Misamis Oriental. And we see that it is fitting to have the expansion of subdivisions in other provinces, like in the municipalities of Misamis Oriental instead of Cagayan de Oro. So clustering of development should be planned ahead, and our National Economic Development Authority has spoken about this, and they have created in the draft to have a metropolitan city that the development should be within certain clusters. For Cagayan de Oro, the offsprings of changes and development towards a metropolitan should be along this line, and for the municipalities and cities of other provinces should also be along this line, so that as a whole, everything will be developed according to a plan. So it's a challenge yet, because there is no law yet. We are waiting for Congress, the Republic of the Philippines, to enact a legislation that would create this metropolitan city for Cagayan de Oro, Misamis Oriental, and the province of Bukidnon. So if that would be put in place as a structure, as the new structure and system for Cagayan de Oro, that maybe perhaps our development would really fit into place to strike a balance between the economic prosperity, as I have mentioned, and the caring of our nature. But in our local efforts, while having all this development on infrastructure and economic, we also take care with the social, the family, the community, the health sectors by doing and implementing infra and social development programs for our people.
Very, very interesting. And it's a huge challenge ahead of you, but I think maybe you could also learn from the experience of other cities, for example, like Nagoya or Yara City, who have been trying to kind of put incentives for the private developers to cooperate and move their development in the direction that fits into the global biodiversity framework. So maybe that is another area of, how do I say, the city-to-city exchange possibility for future exchange. So thank you very much for that input.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to move on to asking questions to UN Habitat. So we had message from Ms. Maimuna Mohammed Sharif, Executive Director, but we are delighted to join by Mr. Jose Chong, leader of Global Public Space Program, Planning, Finance and Economy Section on Urban Practices Branch of Global Solutions Division of United Nations Habitat. So welcome, Mr. Jose Chong. I actually met with Ms. Maimuna Mohammed Sharif 2 weeks ago in Takamatsu, Japan, as we were both participating in the G7 Sustainable Urban Development Ministerial meeting. And we had a very interesting conversation about how global agendas such as climate change and biodiversity were strongly recognized in the second session of the United Nations Habitat Assembly, which Executive Director also kindly mentioned in her video message. So, Mr. Jose Chong, we would like to hear from you, and please share us the recent development at UN Habitat, incorporating these global agendas, and especially about the role of UN Habitat is playing at the moment, and also are planning to play in supporting cities and urban areas to integrate nature-based solutions for biodiversity conservation and public health. So please, the floor is
Thanks
yours.
a lot, Togo, and it's a pleasure to share this panel with these prominent speakers. And I glad to hear a lot of the work that has been done through cities is actually on improving the network on green and public spaces in cities. And actually this is a work that we have been doing for the last 10 years through the program. So I think we are very happy how to integrate these global frameworks on biodiversity on the work that we are currently doing with Habitat to support cities to improve the network of green and blue spaces in general. So I wanted to start more giving a little bit more on deep on the message of the Executive Director of UN Habitat. And as you are aware, UN Habitat is a focal point of the agency specialized in cities in the United Nations framework. And actually for us, it was quite important, and it was mentioned also in the record message from the Executive Director, that during the second UN Habitat Assembly, we have the mandate from member states on a specific resolution on biodiverse and resilient cities. And it's a subtitles mainstreaming biodiversity and ecosystem services into urban and territorial planning. So I think this is quite important because Habitat has been working on issues about urban planning in general. Some of the projects clearly, when you are doing a well master plan and implementation of city development, you incorporate biodiversity components. But actually now it's stronger that member states are asking Habitat to work on biodiversity, and this as a part of the Target 12 of the Global Biodiversity Framework. I wanted to only to read the 3 points that actually is mandated in the resolution that will give us more clarity about the role, and this is something that we have been supporting cities around the world, and particularly the ones that has a less capacity and the ones in the middle income economies and also in developing countries. And the first one that it was stated in the resolution is to promoting the mainstreaming of biodiversity and ecosystem services into urban and territorial planning and management. So I think that this is quite important, and this we have some clear examples from the cities that are represented today on how biodiversity and ecosystem services can integrate it in the management of the city, but also in the city expansion in general. No? And this is quite important because we are aware that actually in certain regions, urbanization is happening in a fast pace. The second one that is quite important, from the role of Habitat in the coming future, is to promoting alignment at all levels of governments regarding urban policies that are sensitive to all social, economic, and ecological contexts. And this is quite important, and I think Amanda also mentioned the importance of how to align different tiers of government, national government, local governments, and even intra-department coordination, to be able to coordinate the efforts on biodiversity in cities. No, so I think this can be an important role, and we have a specific program on national urban policies, and maybe for it's actually we have the less of half the country has a sort of a strong national urban policies in their national plans. And the third one that I wanted to highlight is to promoting income generating professionals and employment opportunities stemming from the conservation, restoration, sustainable use and management of biodiversity for people in vulnerable situations. No, so this is quite important, how to liaise with the professional, to mainstream the importance of biodiversity in cities. And very concretely, and also was mentioned in the video, is now what we will have is like an international expert advisory board working on the topic, and is what we are going to highlight and focus is in our role on global monitoring. We are part, for instance, like following up the Sustainable Development Goals, and we have like specific indicators, and actually our program, the Global Public Space Program, together with our colleagues of data analytics, are following up on SDG 11.7.1 that is related to green, to access to safe, inclusive, and green public spaces. So actually, like what we have monitoring, that is the reduction of the available space, but also on the quality of these green spaces that is worrying what is happening now in the current development trends. The other role that Habitat will play out strongly is like to develop methodologies, and we can use a lot of the ones that are already developed, and we like the case studies that, for instance, like the one of the cities that are participating, and also advocacy role on the issues of biodiversity. I will stop here like to have more time like for discussion, but thanks for the invitation for this event. And I hope that it's like a continue collaborating with the partners, and also like getting good examples like for the cities. And we will try like to have like this inspirational examples like from all the participants. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jose Chong. It's very encouraging to hear a strong commitment from UN Habitat. Of course, I mean, if the UN Habitat, I mean, you are highly active in the urban planning and especially in the developing countries basis, and it's extremely important for these cities to incorporate in their early stage of their planning of their cities, to incorporate these ideas about sustainability, and especially about this how to not only secure the space but also improve the quality of the green space as well for benefiting its citizens. So thank you very much for that input. I would like to go for the second round of questions, and I would like to go to Councillor Nakaya again, if I may. So in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic, what lessons have you learned about relation between urbanization, biodiversity, and public health? I mean, what we have understood is that the pandemic have affected differently in different parts of the world. But of course, what we can actually say as a common challenge was that these global pandemic, the burden or the action to respond to the pandemic was put on the shoulder of many local governments across the world. And I think local governments were there in the front line, really challenging to continue the people's livelihood in a very difficult situation. At the same time, trying to manage the economic activities on the ground. So please share your experience and what you have learned from that lesson to be shared for this crowd.
I am in the government, in politics in Cagayan de Oro for 30 years already. And that was the first time that a pandemic has hit the entire global community, and for Cagayan de Oro, it was really difficult and very hard. As an urban city, we are reliant on the businesses operating within the urban area. We are becoming a commercial area instead of an agricultural area, where Mindanao is supposed to be an agricultural. So we are an economic hub also, because industries and the port areas are in Cagayan de Oro. And it all halted when the pandemic has hit everywhere. And because of that, we have to act and react according not only to the orders and directives coming from the health sector, but also to balance the needs of our business sector. While there were supports given by the national government through Bayanihan Act and providing aids and assistance, the city government has also to provide aid and assistance to those who are really in need for having unemployed issue, for stop operating a business and all. But the agricultural sector has operated quite well in Cagayan de Oro. But it was an awakening also for all of us that really indeed there are times that human race would have to face this type of pandemia, and we now understand how to react if, for instance, another pandemic will hit us. Isolation places are already covered for health protection and rehabilitation of certain sectors and individuals. We already expanded our services for hospital and healthcare. We also provided measures that would react immediately if, for example, there are the same issues will come within our territory, including the healthcare for our animal industry. So it was really a challenge. It was really a challenge. But after, in the middle of 2022, everything went better, and because of that, we opened already the doors to everyone, including our borders, because Cagayan de Oro City is the gateway to northern Mindanao of the entire island of Mindanao. So we are the hub of the ports and the entry as well. So many things have changed, but God's grace, we have overcome these issues, and we are continuously gearing up for another challenge to develop and protect our environment as well. Thank you.
So do you think the experience have supported you in a direction of promoting of creation of or protecting the environmental space for people? Did it help for your government to move in that direction after COVID and your experiences going through the COVID pandemic?
Yes, even our tourism have spurred quite well because people have been opening small businesses in the upland areas of Cagayan de Oro City, even in Bukidnon and Misamis Oriental. And because the urban center is closed, people tend to go to upland areas where they can also escape from this issue on the health. So it's an eye-opener to all of us, including the sectors who have been greatly affected, and for the people to be conscious, for the leadership and management team of the local government units are also conscious of the things that we need to do to, although our priorities could not be straightened according to our desire, because we need to react day after day. But the pandemic has also opened our eyes to seeing the need to protect our environment, and of course, it's biodiversity.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Mr. Sakamoto from Nagoya City. So you have mentioned how the Nagoya City itself is highly urbanized, and Nagoya is also a very how do I say, a strong economic hub of Japan at the same time. And so from that perspective, how has Nagoya City engaged with local communities and stakeholders, such as private sector, to promote awareness and involvement in urban biodiversity conservation, especially given the fact that you're a very economically driven society as well? So can you please answer to that question?
はい、名古屋市はですね、2019年から内閣府によって、SDGs 未来都市というして選定されておりまして、持続可能な都市の実現を図るための取り組みを今進めているところです。 取り組みの一つとしてですね、環境
just
配
a
慮を
moment.
重視した
Sorry, just a moment. For the participants, sorry, if you are not hearing the English, please select English at the bottom right-hand side in the interpretation, and you'll be able to hear the English translation. Sorry for that. So, Sakamoto-san, please continue.
One such project is the certification of Nagoya SDGs Green Partners to recognize and to support the companies that are taking voluntary measures to realize SDGs, focusing on the environmental concern. One of the evaluation items is the implementation of business activity, taking the biodiversity into account. Certified companies get the preferential treatment in contract. One of the other projects is Nagoya Green Wave, which is a tree planting initiative. Every year, about 100 entities, including companies, nursery schools, and kindergartens, participate in this event. As a part of Green Wave initiative, we give a special seminar to elementary schools in the city to offer an opportunity to learn about the biodiversity through orange tree planting and a lecture on the local wildlife. For the project to restore wildlife in the downtown area shown on the slide earlier, it's indispensable to have the collaboration with private businesses and the citizen groups. Since 2021, when the project was launched, private companies and citizen groups have been working on the biodiversity greening, such as the flower beds in front of Nagoya Terminal Station and the rooftop greening of hotels and multi-purpose open space in the commercial facilities. And these stakeholders continue to manage them. The collaboration with various stakeholders through these projects enhances the awareness about the biodiversity and facilitates the participation. That's all.
The biodiversity preservation. Thank you very much for sharing that example. I would like to ask Councillor Amanda Stone, little bit different question. You mentioned about the research that you have based about the greening space and how the 300 meters from greening space from the citizens will have a positive effect. So I would like to ask for you to elaborate a little bit about this research. Have you conducted this research, or is it collaborative work with your city, with a university, or is it something that you learned from the international organization? How did you incorporate that into a policy? Can you please elaborate? Thank you.
It was based on research that came through the World Health Organization, that they described indicators for the provision of green open space on a number of parameters. And one was green open space that was accessible within 300 meters. We have actually, so we've used that as a benchmark, but we've also looked at the different types, sizes, and purposes of all our spaces and what the catchment is for those. So for a small pocket park, the catchment's about 150 metres. For a local park, it's about 200 metres. For the next level up park, it's about 300 metres, which is what the WHO was talking about. Then there are district parks, which are maybe 400 metres, regional parks, 500 metres. So different parks, different purposes, different levels of access, but this was all referred to by the World Health Organization. You saw in that map I showed you at the very beginning that huge amount of green space down the bottom. That's not actually easy walking distance for most people, even though it's along the boundary of our city. And you're talking about COVID before, it was packed with people during the lockdowns for COVID when everyone could get out and walk for 20 minutes a day. And they'd come from within their 5-kilometre radius that they could travel. But normally it's not packed. It's a retreat, it's highly valued, but it's not the local open space for most people. They'll go and sit in a pocket park and talk to the neighbour and have their lunch and listen to the birds and just enjoy being outside. So it was based on that data from the World Health Organization. It helped us decide how many of each type of park we needed, where it needed to be, but most of all, how most people, whether young, old, with a disability, whatever, could get there easily and enjoy the social, the physical, the cultural, the spiritual benefits and the mental health benefits that it brings.
Very interesting. Can I ask a bit further about that? Because when the city wants to kind of refer to these international research or findings, some cases they might find it difficult to understand the contents. Did you have that issue of how do I say, getting a support from other councillors in your city to get their support and really fully developing the understanding of how that would really benefit your city in the long run?
Do you know, the secret is we got a consultant to do this work. An open space strategy here is a very complex document. There's a lot of consultation that's undertaken because it's very important to every citizen in our city. They all are impacted by it. So we had to do a lot of pop-up consultations. Our staff did that. But the background for it was undertaken by some consultants who did the research collation, if you like, and related it to our city, and then helped our staff, who then helped councillors understand what was important. And the reason it was so important to have this sound basis is because we want the developer contribution of 10%, which is what we're seeking. We may not get it, but that's what we're seeking, has to go into our planning scheme and has to be approved by the state government. And you can imagine that will be contested by every developer. Yes. So, and it has been contested quite rigorously. It's been the subject of very long tribunal hearings and lots of evidence and so on. So this document had to meet many tests, one of them being it's applicable to our community, but the other is it had to stand up in these tribunals. And it has largely. The debates about, and it's not quite through yet, but the debates are not about the value of open space, the need for different types for different purposes, the need for it to be walkable to, all of that, the importance to human health and wellbeing. That was never debated. What was debated was where the funds should be allocated and what proportion it should be. And it was very, very technical about the amounts of money. And that is still being worked through, but the basis of it was never challenged, which is really positive, really. And it's been really, really tested.
Fantastic. That's very encouraging. Thank you so much for sharing that experience.
WHO, go there.
Yes, we should all check. Thank you very much for that. Finally, I think I would like to come back to Mr. Jose Chong from UN Habitat. By hearing these presentations and response from the cities, and by you mentioning about the Habitat's intention to move forward in this direction of trying to be a hub of providing some sort of how do I say, suggestions for the city planners in the future to incorporate these experiences that cities have already experienced around the world. So do you have something to add on that? What is your expectation and what are you planning to do in terms of providing the city planners in the future to how to achieve the Target 12 and other global agenda?
Thanks a lot, Togo. And I wanted to add a little bit on the last experience, like from Yarra City. I think like this is quite interesting. We have been following up like a SDG 11.7 that is related to the green and open public space. We have a database of 1,000 cities that is doing global monitoring on accessibility to open and green space, but also in terms of amount allocated to green spaces. No, so on this regard, in this global monitoring that we are having as a part of the SDG process, we have that 16% of areas in cities are allocated to open space. In average, but it's like the majority of this 16% is allocated to streets. So actually the percentage allocated to green and open spaces is low, no? And we are seeing that the depending of the development process is actually reducing, no? So these efforts like to increase green spaces, but also on quality and quantity and accessibility, and also guaranteeing equality like to the access is quite important, no? Because it's like not all the areas of the city have the same accessibility levels. On terms of accessibility at the global level, like we know that it's like only 47% of the population living in city has a convenient access to an open space. And we are using the measure of a 5 minutes walk to an open space that is normally will be like a neighborhood park, like to access, no? But it's like so we see that only 50% of the population of the cities has access to green space, and it's like Amanda also highlighted the importance that it was like for mental and physical health, even like exacerbated during the pandemic. No, I think that this is quite important. And actually, what we have developed, and this is something that also we can provide to cities, and will be interesting like to see if we are using the same methodology. We have developed a citywide public space assessment that incorporate green areas, and we conducted this assessment in 30 cities around the world, like to test and to have an open source methodology where cities can actually monitor the progress and the track of open and green spaces. And this is actually incorporating also use, no? Because I think it's quite important the use, but also disaggregation data of who has access to these spaces, no? And then it's like also the green coverage in cities. No, I think like this is quite important. We can share the methodologies, open available, and have a lot of examples around the world, and it's like you can compare. maybe I wanted to end up like with 3 parts, and actually also building up on what the ED was mentioning of like how we can assure that biodiversity is embedded in the urban planning processes. And I think like we have to do the things right. And it's like how to do better cities. And I think like Nagoya City was mentioning a lot about participation. And I think like civic engagement is quite fundamental in order like to continue to protect these spaces, but also to assure that in a new planning processes, it's like we have to have like a proper network of green and blue corridors. No, so I think this is quite important from the public space side. We are initiating also a program on urban river regeneration. So I think like this is quite important how we can share experiences between the different partners. The other thing is like that is we have seen and we have been following up a lot of how to curb the urban sprawl. So it's like a less density in peri-urban areas, following the suburbanization of the of urban growth. It is something that we have to challenge. And it's like only I wanted to share like one statistics that is like between 2012 and 2020. The land consumption average 1.5 increase. So this is the land that decrease in cities, but it's like the population rate was 1.2. So actually the footprint of cities are growing faster than the population growth. No, so it is quite important, and it will vary depend of the region. So it's like we have to create more compact and dense urban environments, like to avoid like a growth of the city over natural areas. So it's like we have like accessibility, walking distance accessibility, ensuring also the green and blue corridors in cities, and avoiding like a growing over natural peri-urban areas. No, so it's like we have certain programs working on urban regeneration, rural and urban linkages that are quite important, and also how to link with national policies. And the last thing that it was mentioned is like doing things at a scale, because I think this is quite important when we see the overall world, where in 2020, more than 1 billion people live in slums or informal settlements. This is quite big, it still is a challenge. And it will, like from that, 85% of that people living in slum and informal settlements are living in sub-Saharan Africa. So I think like this is some challenge, like with not access like to basic infrastructure. And this is quite important because it's like this avoid like for example how to maintain natural resources when you have to assure survival living strategies of people like in the cities. No, so I think like this is quite important, like how to think and how we can work together like to avoid like a growth over natural areas, ensuring biodiversity, but also thinking of how not to leave anyone behind in the process. Last thing is like how to manage like a global and local agendas. And this is quite important. We have the member states subscribe like to global agendas as the Global Biodiversity Framework with the specific targets, SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, the specific goal on cities, but also like the new urban agenda, the one that was signed in Quito in 2016. And final campaigns that are more short-term, like for example, the UN Decade, like for ecosystem restoration. No, so these are fundamental agendas that has to be aligned also what cities are doing and aligning with local plans. I will leave it here, and I hope that if like we can work together towards like a more inclusive and biodiverse cities and environments. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Jose Chong. That was very valuable comments from your side. I have to apologize because I think we are pushing time, and I've been seeing that there's been some questions posted on the Q&A, and some of the participants have already responded. May I ask the Secretariat, are there any questions that maybe it's not answered? Do you have any indication? I might be missing out on some of the questions. To my understanding, I think.
Yes, Torgo, there's one question from Councillor Coogan in Johannesburg. And really, she just wanted to know, to what extent are cities incorporating vertical and horizontal roof gardens with indigenous plants? And how are they balancing and incorporating roof gardens with their solar panels?
So the question, to my understanding, not only securing the space, but how to secure the local plants, right, for the replanting. And okay, do you have any experience on that, Amanda, of that indication of how you select the plants to be planted on the green space?
Not always. Every planning application at Yarra is assessed by our sustainability team, which includes the biodiversity officer, who will give feedback on plants that are proposed, and usually it's recommended that they are native or appropriate plants. We're also developing guidelines for residents to develop vertical gardens on existing buildings, retrofitting them, so giving them advice and guidance on how to do that if you want to do it. The issue with solar panels versus rooftop gardens, we haven't cracked that nut yet, so it'd be great to hear any advice on how to manage that.
Thank you very much. I think, to my understanding, to my knowledge, I think this is ongoing discussion is happening in many parts of the world about that discussion. So yes, thank you very much for that question, and thank you very much, Amanda, for answering to that. So I think we are towards the end of this particular session. So as I think some of us responded, if we are not able to answer the questions, we might answer afterwards by gathering information and respond accordingly. And apologize for not being able to allocate more time for Q&A from the participants, but it's due to my bad management of this session. As a conclusion, I would like to conclude this session. Thank you very much once again for all the panelists and speakers who have spent your time to participate this important session. As I explained in the beginning, this whole webinar is to continue the momentum from COP15, focusing on actions and how do we actually move on to COP16 and onwards to achieve the goal of 2030 and also beyond. And really, the action we could see that is happening on the ground, some very interesting examples coming out. UN Habitat is stepping in, and we expect UN Habitat to play a bigger role in perhaps coming out with a lot of guidelines and researches that local governments can use. Local governments, on the other hand, can exchange or share the experience that local governments already accumulated to contribute to the UN Habitat's activity. So I think we were really able to capture where we are in terms of this global challenge. And I thank again for your participation. I thank all of you who have worked, the ICLEI team who have worked to manage to make this happen. We did have a bit of a challenge about the video. I apologize for that. But I think overall, it went smooth, and I think we were able to share some very valuable experience. So thanks again, and hopefully we will see in other webinars that we are planning in the future. Thank you very much for participation. Thank you.
Thank you.